And a very pleasant good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Morning Briefing here on NoFilter.net, also Caffeine TV and many other platforms in the streaming universe. I'm Jeff DeForest, along with Mike Lubitz, and this comes under the heading of Boy, What a Game Last Night. Unbelievable. Told the story many times. I worked with a guy when I first came to Miami. That's about 40 years ago. I started my broadcasting career here. I had done some stuff in California before that, but it was strictly on a minor league podunk radio station level. And so I thought maybe to seek my fame and fortune, I would move to Miami. And I got here, got a job right away. There was a sportscaster I worked for who was originally out of Cincinnati, Ohio. He was big there, but people come here. This is God's waiting room. You come here, to South Florida. Maybe it's not the case anymore, but back then, you come here. You're waiting for Godot, my friends. You're in a rocking chair in front of what used to be the old South Beach, and you're saying, "Am I still alive? I feel my pulse." This guy had come down here kind of in semi-retirement, although he was doing very well for himself, but he really didn't care anymore about the sporting world. And so he was driving about a ridiculous amount of miles, like 90 miles from Isla Mirada in the Keys up to a station that was in Miami, in the central part of Miami. And he unfortunately was a raging alcoholic. So it was questionable whether he was ever going to show up. And a guy used to come in, and this was back in the days when you had wire copy, no computers. And they would hand him a pile of papers like this thick. And he was, barely given enough time to thumb through them and sort out what was what. So he would start every broadcast with, "Boy, what a game last night," having not seen any games. But if you saw this one with the Philadelphia Eagles and the Seattle Seahawks, and especially if you were laying 3 with the Eagles, which was our recommendation, I believe, we might have, without an overwhelming amount of confidence, have alluded to the idea that in spite of my grandmother's dying words of always take the points. On her deathbed, this woman is, at 90-something years old. And she looks me right in the eye as she's about to close her eyes for the final time and says, "Always take the points." And is that not something that everybody, Lubie, should take into consideration? The wisdom of my dear departed grandmother? Always take the points, because this was the case last night. For the entire ball game, it looked like you were going to cover if you had the Philadelphia Eagles. And not only that, but this is a crucial game for the Eagles. They had just been shellacked in consecutive ball games by teams that everybody thought was very good. The San Francisco 49ers now would have to be the favorite to win the Lombardi Trophy this year and win the Super Bowl, although they showed vulnerability when they lost 3 in a row without Deebo Samuel. McCaffrey, could he possibly be the MVP in the league for the 49ers, Lubie? What do you think?
I mean, Purdy, Tua, Tyreek Hill, Dak Prescott, I guess, this week sort of showed him a little bit. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, what the Niners are doing is sort of scary, and it doesn't look good for the Eagles right now.
Yes, and they will be tested again. The Niners are hosting, I believe, the Baltimore Ravens, who were able to, I don't know that you could call it an escape. I mean, this wasn't, Harry Houdini.
No, they won by a lot.
But yeah, they won by double-digit points against a very poor Arizona Cardinal team, but surrendered a lot of points in that game. I didn't see any of it, so difficult to put into context how good or bad the Niners look. But when you put up 45 in an NFL game, you have to feel pretty comfortable that, you know what, Shanahan, your offense is clicking. And it has been, for the most part, ever since that disastrous 3-game losing skid. They've been annihilating people and running away and hiding, and sitting there atop the NFC now with the number 1 seed and a chance to go ahead and close that out in a very favorable position to win the championship. But we'll see how they handle Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. That'll be a big curiosity point. Last night, though, the Eagles were in a position to put themselves in the same category after shaking off a disastrous 2-game losing streak. They did lose to 2 what we thought were quality teams in San Francisco and Dallas. But this was an opportunity to turn things around. Now, the word was that Jalen Hurts was badly sick and ill. This wasn't an injury. He'd been banged up all season long. They made it sound like the English patient had a better chance of being listed as questionable than Jalen Hurts in this ballgame. There was no chance whatsoever that this guy was going to play. Yet they flew him out there on a separate plane. He didn't want to infect any of his teammates by going on a team flight. And then what happens? The very first play call, it's a designed run for Jalen Hurts, and he runs 15 yards off tackle. And you thought, my God, what a sandbag job that is. A disgrace to have these reports coming out of Philadelphia that Jalen Hurts was going to be a shell of himself in this particular contest, and that there was the possibility that they would be starting a backup quarterback against what turned out to be a Seattle backup in Drew Lock. So Philadelphia is kind of controlling this game. What would you say? You turned out after the first half last night, Lubie?
Yeah, I watched. Was it 10-7? I remember. I feel like it was 7-7, but it felt like Philadelphia was in control of the game, and I was like, all right, I'm going to go to bed. I'm sure the Eagles will win. And then I wake up to find Drew Lock led a 92-yard drive.
A 92-yard drive.
I was like, what the hell did I miss?
I heard a number being speculated upon that over 8 million cell phones were crushed.
Oh, jeez.
With the last thing that they had witnessed was their betting app, as their money evaporated along with Philadelphia's chance to be the number one seed, or at least for the time being. And Seattle, with Drew Lock, who had been benched in favor of Geno Smith, albeit Smith distinguished himself with an excellent season last year and was accorded the job. Drew Lock was very emotional after this ball game. And you got a better sense of what it means, that it's not always just about the money. I mean, it's nice to be making this kind of cash as a backup quarterback. Holy Don Strock, what are we talking about? The guy just carries a clipboard and wears a baseball cap backwards. That's it. You're making millions and millions of dollars. Who could ever complain about a job like that? But what drives any athlete at this level, Lubie, is professional desire to compete. And they're highly competitive, these guys. That's the only way that they're able to excel to the level that they do. Locke was absolutely torn apart by the idea that he was not playing and felt so good, so gratified. He was able to make a contribution. It was kind of heartening to see that it meant so much to somebody, but impossible to conceive that this drive was going to work. People in Philadelphia have to be gargling with formaldehyde this morning. The entire city has to be just under the stench of cheese whiz and that sickly orange color. It has to be even on the Rocky statue and the steps of the art museum. Are you kidding me? Well, that was impossible. That was like the collapse of the '64 Phillies, which you weren't around at the time.
No, I was not.
I happen to be a Met fan, and yes, I was there. I was one of the 800,000 people that were there in 1964 when Jim Bunning on Father's Day pitched a perfect game in the first game of a doubleheader. And the reason that I can verify and validate this is because only the people who were there would have, and that was a time where A, you had doubleheaders, imagine that, and B, and we always wanted to go to these doubleheaders as baseball fans because what could be better, Lubie? It's like BOGO at the grocery store than getting two games instead of just one for the same price. It was an incredible offering. Couldn't wait to go. But Rick Wise was the starter in the second game. And anybody who doesn't know that wasn't at that Bunning game. I don't know how many people are claiming that anymore. I mean, it was so how long ago was that, Lubie? We're talking 36 plus 23, 50 some odd years ago that took place. But the collapse was monumental, well documented, many sources, both in literary pieces, books have been written about it, movies, documentaries, where Gene Mauch ends up throwing an entire rack of spare ribs at Richie Allen because he's so upset with what's going on in the locker room. Gene Mauch, a fabled old school hard-nosed manager, blows a 10-game lead, or I don't know, it might have been 6.5 with 10 games to go. A monumental collapse. And it was tantamount to what happened last night with the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't know that it means their season goes up in smoke, but for anybody who was laying 3 with the Eagles on our recommendation, our most sincere holiday apologies. What were the odds that fucking Drew Lock was going to go 92 yards? He's throwing the ball all over the yard, too. I mean, he completed passes that were only accomplished because of receiving miracles on the part of DK Metcalf on a couple of them, and then this Jackson Smith Njigba or whatever.
Njigba, yeah.
Njigba. Yeah. What a catch this guy makes for the clinching score in the game. And, of course, it was a dagger in the hearts of everybody that was happily laying 3 with the Philadelphia Eagles and thought, okay, there's not enough time here to even consider going for a field goal, no matter how quickly you get down the field. This game is, pardon the pun, a lock. And we got locked out of cashing a ticket on that, so that was ugly. Where do we stand now with the National Football League? Many interesting games. coming up in the immediate horizon here, as you have 3 weeks left in a regular season and an awful lot to establish. There are 2 teams I think that have been mathematically eliminated so far.
Oh wow!
No. I mean, several of them are. You probably have to be in the 7-7 category to be playoff eligible at this point. I don't know about mathematically, but when they put up in the hunt and the teams like 3-12, kind of dampens the whole idea that it was something significant to make it to the postseason. But at this stage, if you're not 7-7 or better, it's probably golf club city by the time we get through the next 3 weeks of the NFL season. And yet, I don't know who stands out. Is San Francisco clear cut best team in the NFC right now? Dallas looked like garbage against the Buffalo Bills. The Bills, a team that was its own worst enemy all throughout the season, and probably will be for as long as Josh Allen is their quarterback. Still have risen to the occasion. They won a couple of key ball games back to back.
Man,
Looked great last week.
Back to back. That's the thing. The NFL right now, to me, it's the Niners healthy because again, without Williams, who's older, so he can't get hurt, and Samuel, who gets hurt a lot. With those guys, they're the best team in the league. And then it's just a lot of like, you want to say the Ravens and the Dolphins and the Chiefs, but the Bills just beat the Chiefs and the Cowboys, so you can't forget the Bills. If they restrain Josh Allen and he's not just handing the ball off, they're a really good team. The NFC, the Cowboys have shown signs if they could somehow get home. The Eagles, we know they have a championship caliber pedigree, but they're struggling right now. It's sort of it's as wide open as it's ever been. At this point in the year, you usually know this is a great team. This is a good. To me, it's the Niners, and then I don't know. I really don't know.
Very tough to figure. We'll get more answers, though. The Dolphins here, our local team, take on the Dallas Cowboys. They're hosting the Cowboys, then face the Ravens, who will be coming off a game against the aforementioned San Francisco 49ers. So we'll start to see things with a little bit more clarity as the next round of games is completed this week. And yet still, it looks like you could throw an umbrella over maybe even 10 teams.
Yep.
And pose them as possibilities and not be looked upon as if you were nuts. Pose them as possibilities to win the Lombardi Trophy. Watch some basketball last night. This is a team that doesn't get much mention. The city is known for what? Racist cops and, hosting a Super Bowl, which I don't know who had to be greased and to what extent to get Minneapolis, Minnesota to be the host of a Super Bowl. Now, we did take in a basketball game there. It was kind of weird, Lubie, because how polite what was that crowd that was going into the game? Did not seem like the usual fanatics that you would associate with a high-caliber NBA team and a long history of being an NBA contender. The Timberwolves coming into this year, they had shown signs of life going into the season. But out of last year, but it seemed to be missing a lot. That people questioned that Rudy Gobert trade.
Yep.
That the acquisition of Gobert probably wasn't the most fortuitous of moves to make, and yet he's in this ball game against the Miami Heat, who got their players back last night. Tyler Hero returns, and Bam Adebayo, who'd been out briefly, also came back. Hero was out for a long time, so they finally had their big three, so to speak, playing. With Jimmy Butler in the game and Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero. They're leading by 17 in the second quarter of this ballgame and are leading by 12 at halftime. I'm watching the halftime analysis. The Heat had posted like 64 points or 66 at the half. And you're thinking, wow, okay, so the Timberwolves, this is it. Best six man in the league is South Beach in Miami. Imagine coming here from Minnesota and catching this wildness. And it turned out it was like a beautiful evening last night. And the night before was also a good night to get out there and be partying at some. We have clubs here that are just named bed, and that's all there is in there.
We used to, yeah. Yep.
Imagine some young NBA stars coming in there from South Beach or to South Beach from Minnesota, where the highlight of your evening might be to share a walleye sandwich with somebody. Not much going on there in terms of entertainment. But, wow, did they acquit themselves in the second half? The Timberwolves are a really good team. This Edwards has come on and become a monster player. Karl Anthony Towns seems to be playing and buying into the whole team concept. A lot of people thought that maybe he was detached and aloof. That's been anything but the case. Gobert was a monster, 16 boards in the game, and really a menace on the inside in terms of a defensive presence. It doesn't hurt, Lubie, in the NBA to have that guy that is like, a human eraser, the old Marvin Webster thing, where, every shot is going to face some level of intimidation and pressure. And I think Gobert really does add that element. He's been a defensive player of the year. How many times, Rudy Gobert?
Oh, God, probably like 2 or 3 times at least.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, his best known characteristic, though, was when, he coughed all over everybody's microphone when he had COVID-19 before anybody knew what that was.
Yeah.
And he was just kind of joking around, but he was skewered for that, and maybe rightfully so, for taking a risk with people's health. But who knew at the time, right? Nobody knew what the hell that was. Gobert seems like a perfectly decent guy to everybody except Draymond Green. But Minnesota definitely, that is no farce that their record is 20-5 at this point, and they're the number 1 seed in the West. By the way, what good did it do to Lakers to win that in-season tournament?
I don't know. It probably tired them out.
Since then, they have lost to a team that was on an 18-game losing streak in San Antonio, and come back and were beaten by the Knicks, who were in the midst of one of those arduous West Coast swings and had already been on the road for a couple of ball games, and somehow they outlasted the Lakers in the end and beat them. So the Lakers 0-2. That's what they have as a reward for going in and playing that extra game and putting all efforts in. They hung the banner last night.
Yes, they did.
What is it, the Crypto.com arena now?
I don't know.
I thought I saw Sam Bankman-Fried throwing up the ceremonial first tip while he was in handcuffs. But anyway, the Lakers have taken a crap ever since they won the in-season tournament. And like we said, the Timberwolves, definitely a team to look for. And for those of you who thought James Harden was finished, he's not. He won't go away. Playing excellent ball for the Clippers right now, who are on an 8-game winning streak. And Harden, I think they started out 1-5 when Harden, or 0-5 when he first was acquired. And you thought, why would they want this, for lack of better terminology, piece of garbage and an absolute chemistry killer on their team? And sure enough, the guy's playing great. And the Clippers have found some kind of rhythm. So they may loom as a danger later on as the season progresses. All right, that's going to do it for us. Had a lot of fun. Well, what's your feeling about Cheese Whiz?
I like
It was just dumped over an entire city. Is that possible? That's what happened last night to the city of Philadelphia.
I don't know about that.
Holy Chico Ariz. My God. All right, we're going to get out of here. Thanks so much for tuning in. Always a pleasure. Thanks so much. We see a little evolution here on the morning briefing. So for Mike Lubie Lubitz, I'm Jeff DeForest. Appreciate all you guys tuning us in here on NoFilter.net and Caffeine TV. And we will see you next time right here on NoFilter.net.